Hi, everyone. This is producer Natalie. Today, we have a special episode where CJ welcomes and jams out with Sasha Orloff, who will be the host of Turpentine Finance, officially debuting later this week right here on this feed. You'll hear Sasha take us inside the minds of CEOs, CFOs, and decision makers at incredible companies like Instacart, Mercury, Andressen Horowitz, OpenAI, and more. The conversation you're about to hear is a candid and fun discussion between Sasha and CJ that covers CJ's favorite highlights and insights from over 50 episodes of Run the Numbers, how to have an impactful CEO-CFO relationship, and why we need more transparency around failure when we tell business stories.
Sasha, what's going on, my man?
Hello. We finally got here. Is this thing on? Is this recorded? I think it's happening.
So that actually happened when they were recording my intro for the first podcast. I was like you. I also heard you like empty out like a bowl of coins. I think I heard a hammer hit the ground like while you were scrambling. But like I was like, is this fucking thing on? And they took that and they made it a clip that was in my intro monologue for every single time. So sometimes those things work out in your favor.
Hey, you built an amazing podcast.
What excites you the most about starting a podcast?
I think I've been an avid listener to Run the Numbers, and I ride my bike every day and I listen to podcasts. And I feel like I had this really kind of interesting opportunity where building a couple companies, my last couple companies scaled to 100 million and 300 million revenue. I'm on my third one. And I get to have these like really incredible private conversations with people about how do you make decisions in uncertainty. And a lot of the part that I felt is like really one of the most rewarding parts in that is that like discussion with the finance team. And so I think it kind of hopefully carries on a bit of the torch of what you've built here in this feed. And obviously, we need to talk about your new feed and this exciting stuff that you are doing. But I think it hopefully brings a slightly different perspective of like a CEO working with a CFO. And so hopefully that gets me excited to get to share some of these amazing conversations I've got to have in private over the last decade.
One of the questions I always like to ask the guests too is what is the foundation of a great CEO CFO relationship? And you get all sorts of answers, but it is a critical one.
Well, I think you responded, but I think you made a funny comment as we were prepping for this about you referred to it as the first time you reported to a non-CFO, which I think is an interesting way to talk about the CEO role along the way, perhaps, or the business partner. What's your view?
Well, to flesh that statement out a bit, I mean, I came up in the FP&A world for a number of years where I was the one leading the operating plan, and my main customer was always the CFO. And I'm always playing it back to him or her in their language, which is also my language. And then the first time you become a CFO, I remember I was going through the P&L with my CEO, and I was like, "Oh, he's like kind of getting this, but I'm like, I'm speaking a completely different dialect that he's not used to here." I was like, "Oh, I gotta flip this and make it like more real for him." And so that was a big learning curve for me. And I think also some of the just day-to-day bits of feedback that you would expect. This is in any job too, as you get higher. You're not going to have somebody who's giving you the tactical advice of like, hey, you forgot to carry the one there in like a finance tone. Now I almost feel like being a CFO, not reporting to a CFO, reporting to a CEO, I'm almost like an understudy to become a CEO, I hope someday in a lot of ways, which was like a unique dynamic to observe in myself, because before you're looking up to the CFO saying, how do I become that someday? And you're talking the same language, as I said. Now you're learning to speak a different language, and you're also just watching and kind of taking backup quarterback reps whenever you're watching the CEO talk to people.
Yeah, I think CFOs bring two amazing superpowers, which is why I love working with finance teams. And I think that the first one is you're a truth teller. And so when we kind of look back to actually your sixth episode and the Carta CFO, Charlie Keevers, the importance of truth telling is like an amazing insight that I wish more people had. But like the CFO, her or his job is to be the truth, the unbiased truth of the business. And the second thing is aside from being a truth teller, they're also like a great thought experiment partner. And so the decisions that are easy, like, hey, this channel is like performing really well. Should we invest more? Like, great. I don't need to spend time on that. This channel is not performing well. Should we continue to invest in that? No. Like, those are easy stuff to do. What about these moments where there just isn't data and you're thinking about trade-offs and ROI and those conversations are the things that get me so excited as a part of my job as the CEO. And to me, the best person to do that with is a CFO. That's the part that I really enjoy about that relationship between a CEO and a CFO.
And I think it extends even further to other people in New York. Like I always say, the biggest compliment is when someone like my CRO or CMO comes to me with a half-baked idea, and they're not afraid. Like he's the money guy is going to be like, "What are you asking me for investment in?" They're like, "No, you're a thought partner, and like I also like hanging out with you, so I can bounce an idea off of you and get like your realistic opinion on it without feeling like you're gonna I won't feel snake bitten after,
Yeah, you can have the good debates where you can let down your guard and just talk the truth. Like, these are the things that I'm truly excited about this opportunity. These are the things I'm concerned about, and let's kind of talk them through. And different CEOs, everybody's different, as there is every CFO, as every person's different. I am a bit more of a like optimistic, let's go big, let's do the thing. And so it's also really important for people like me. We need a numbers person to kind of bring the conversation a little bit back to reality. And so that's a important part about building a company.
I asked a question to Mark Hawkins, the ex-CFO of Salesforce, one time at a conference about how he manages the expectations of a CEO and a board. And what he said is you're brokering risk on this frontier. So like if you go back to the classic economics graph where it was like guns and butter and it's like, what's the efficient frontier of this? I sucked at econ in college, by the way. He was saying like you have the Sashas of the world who have gotten to this incredible point by saying like, damn the torpedoes, we're going to go for it. I have this ambitious vision, and like kudos to them. They did it. Then you have the board who's saying we're stewards of capital. Let's make sure like we don't totally blow this year. And then you as the CFO have to broker that conversation and also find your own voice on that frontier.
We originally were going to call the podcast Allocate for this exact reason. To me, like these are the capital allocation discussions or the resource allocation discussions, which is the bridge between people like you, the CFO, and people like me, the CEO.
That means I can still allocate for my second podcast. No, I'm just playing with you.
I think you've built a pretty good reputation of following on Run the Numbers. Let's talk about this. What are you up to?
Me? I'm just trying to keep the lights on. So I think a lot of people know this because like I talk about losing sleep, but I've got 2 kids under 2. And then I'm a full-time CFO for a Series C startup. And then I got the newsletter and the podcast. And it's been cool to see the growth of the content I've created. It's actually pretty wild to me that people listen to me and like me that much because my wife is like, I can't believe people like read your stuff this much because I get so tired of listening to you speak about these things. But the internet is this cool place where, like-minded people find each other. I feel like it's the last like true democracy where you can write yourself into any room. And I'm just like completely blown away by the people who will pick up the phone to have a conversation with me now versus 2 years ago. And I think that's what's motivated me to keep going, putting more content out there and to try to go bigger on my own with mostly metrics and newsletter and with the podcast and kind of build my own mini media fiefdom here.
Totally. You are going to achieve the vision of being the CEO of this new empire.
There you go.
We're just to make sure, we'll repeat this a few times, but like just tactically again, how do listeners come over and find the new feed?
Thanks,
CJ's
man.
next thing.
Yeah. So type in Run the Numbers, and it's going to be that seafoam green teal, little square that they have. And it's under the business category. Just type in Run the Numbers or on YouTube. And hack for you, Sasha. For some reason, the discovery on YouTube is so much better. Like it's just easier to find stuff. So I'm leaning into video and YouTube. So I recommend you do too.
Well, you're a handsome guy, so that makes sense. I got a little bit more work to do before YouTube is probably going to pay off for me, but maybe one day we'll get there. Well, so your wife sounds a little bit Kind of mine made the comment as I told her we were going to kick off this podcast and go. And I was having, she goes, "Oh my God, I can't wait after 3 founding of companies and you are, I'm always being the plus one. I'm going to start calling you a content creator at parties." So this is my husband. I run marketing at this publicly traded company called Square. This like small payments company that people have heard of before. And this is my husband. He's a content creator along the way. She's
My
cannot
wife
wait.
describes me as the Miss Rachel of finance. So Miss Rachel is like this YouTube series for toddlers where she sings songs to them. And I was like, I'm not. I think the whole creator word kind of it rubs me the wrong way. I always joke like, no, I'm a professional opportunist. I just use content as the medium.
So is the format going to stay the same?
Yeah, I'm gonna do interviews with CFOs twice a week, and then people tangential to the CFO space. So, who are your business partners? Usually CMOs, and usually investors. So, I talk to investors that fund them, and also smart product people if they work with the CFO. But the bread and butter is to stay with the CFOs and learn how they make decisions in their day to day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. As a SaaS CFO, I know firsthand how difficult it is to report on SaaS metrics. We've all seen a deal close at the end of the month, but the customer's contract doesn't actually start until the middle of the next month, creating the classic discrepancy between bookings or committed ARR and actual ARR, the real stuff. That's why I'm so pumped to be partnering with Maxio, a company trusted by thousands of SaaS companies to understand these reporting nuances. They basically built and automated the SaaS dashboard I tried to manually cobble together for 3 years. In 2022, SaaS Optics and Chargify combined to become Maxio, the only billing and financial operations platform that was purpose-built for B2B SaaS. They're helping SaaS finance teams automate billing and RevRec, manage collections and payments, and put together investor-grade reporting packages. Visit maxio.com/runthenumbers to learn how Maxio can help you supercharge financial operations in 2024. Request a demo using the Run the Numbers link and receive a 10% discount on your first year with Maxio. That's maxio.com/runthenumbers. If you're a startup founder or executive running a growing business, you know that as you scale, your systems break down and the cracks start to show. If this resonates with you, there are 3 numbers you need to know: 37,000, 25, and 1. 37,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. 1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all your KPIs in one efficient system with one source of truth, manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need in one place. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance, absolutely free at netsuite.com/metrics. Oh yeah, your boy loves metrics. That's netsuite.com/metrics to get your KPI checklist. That's netsuite.com/metrics. I really need this, guys. Please go to netsuite.com/metrics. Woo!
Any lessons for me that you want to share from episode 1 to the Run the Numbers empire to help
Holy
me get
shit!
started on that?
I was so nervous the first interview I did with Michael Tannenbaum and Brex. And I remember I was catching up with the Turpentine people after, and they're like, "Your questions were great, but I don't think you listened to anything you said," because I was so nervous about what did I have in the holster is the next question, and it probably took me like 15 episodes to feel comfortable and be like in the pocket, because it's kind of like boxing where you're kind of sparring with somebody. You're just going back and forth, right? You're having a conversation, you're playing off what they say, and the ability to listen, I think has come a long way. Maybe I wasn't a good listener in my normal life outside of the podcast, but I think listening to what people are, and they drop nuggets of gold along the way, and sometimes they'll hint at it, and it's your job to say, did they want to say more about that, or is there some more meat on the bone? And that's like I feel like an acquired skill that I've been working on.
I've actually found I'm having the opposite problem, which is I'm so fascinated by the guests that I'm just sitting there listening, and then there's like an awkward silence, and they're like, I'm like, oh, I'm the one that's supposed to be asking the question. We'll see the Turpentine team is hopefully a good editing, and we'll make that seem
Oh, they're
seamless.
fabulous editing. Shout out to producer Nancy, my first producer. And I would always shout her out in the initial episodes. And I've had multiple people ask, like, is producer Nancy real? We haven't heard from her. Is producer Nancy okay? So that was always a fun gag. Now I have producer Nat, who people actually have heard on the podcast, and they know that she's real.
Producer Nancy is not an AI agent. She's actually a real wonderful person.
Yeah.
Okay, so lesson number 1. Listen.
You're over that one.
Okay. I got that.
Lesson number 2. I mean, you're a CEO, so I feel like you'll have more pull than I do. But I felt like at first it was like little old me trying to ask for ambitious blocks of time on important people's schedules, and that's always a hurdle because you got to kind of fit into theirs. Like I'm interviewing the CFO of Spirit Airlines in a couple weeks.
Nice.
I'm gonna ask why the seats are so uncomfortable, but besides that, it's like I'll just make whatever time you got work, man. Like, and I'm a CFO too, so like my schedule is pretty packed. But I would say the scheduling aspect is probably the biggest strain, because once you show up, the content creates itself to a certain degree. You still got to do your homework, but the scheduling back and forth, that's the real soul sucking part.
I do. There always are questions, and in my mind, I'm like, can I ask this? Is this going to make them? I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. I want them to feel really comfortable, so they tell the stories. So I think I'll probably try that in the beginning, because I feel bad too. Is I'll say, oh, I asked Twitter questions. So this is a question from the audience. Right?
There have been a couple of questions,
but it was like, I'm interested.
There have been a couple of questions where I was at the end of my rope, like, this is either gonna not go well, or because you want the person to like you. That's the other hard thing I think about podcasts, that people want. I'm not a reporter, right? But you want to ask questions that are like enthralling to people, but at the same time, it might rub somebody the wrong way, and you still have to spend like the rest of the hour with them. So it's like, do you keep like that one barn burner of a question till the very end?
Yeah. Oh, my internet happens to be going out right now. Boom.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So listen to the guests, ask interesting questions, get over the discomfort of maybe silence. How do you know what is interesting? Do you just go with what you think is interesting and like hope it resonates and you find that audience? Because I'm also nervous kicking this off that the stuff I find interesting might not be interesting to other people.
This is what I discovered through my newsletter. So at first I was writing for like this fictional smart person that I thought was out there who would like this content. And that person was fictional indeed. They didn't exist. And I found audience market fit when I started writing and talking like I was with a friend at a cookout, having a beer and talking about business and having fun talking about business. And since then, I've been incredibly selfish in every question I've asked. I've asked it because it was something I was interested in. And that's honestly like how I test everything. I've just followed whatever either me now or me 3 years ago would want to know.
That's good advice. Which is probably what I'm doing right now to you. It's like, this is the things I'm interested in.
But I honestly think that's where
podcast.
That's where the best products I think come from like a real need, right? And it even comes with like, I've experimented with some benchmarking stuff that I write about. I'm not going to benchmark against something that I like. I tried to do it on like open headcount at tech companies, and I was kind of inventing it. Like, I didn't actually care about it. Nobody wanted it. Now I'm doing benchmarking on valuation multiples because I care about it with the company I'm at. People are eating it up, and it's like, well, I should have just done what I wanted to in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good advice. You know, I think Lenny Rachitsky does like an amazing job at this. Every time his newsletter hits my inbox, I'm like, we literally had this discussion this week. It's like he has a little listening bot inside of whatever company I'm at. And it seems to always be hitting the spot, and it resonates.
He's on my Mount Rushmore, and one of the big reasons why I like doubled down on Mostly Metrics, the newsletter. And I have no idea why this guy answered me when I reached out to him blindly on Twitter one time, and he gave me advice about making what I wrote about making other people better at their jobs and helping them make more money, not just being A, interesting, and not B, just like pumping yourself up. And once I started to do that, I think because people are inherently selfish in a way. Like they want to listen to something to be entertained and to get better. Like they don't want to hear about you. And he's done an amazing job at building an audience, just viewing everything through that lens.
I actually went on a hike up in Marin, and I was driving home from the hike, and I saw him on a walk, and I had a nerdy little fan moment. And I rolled down the window, and I just froze because I didn't know what to say, and
What'd you say?
I just grunted, and he looked over, and then I left. And then I shot him a note, and I was like, "I'm sorry, I had a little nerd fan moment." But when that car was driving by and that weirdo kind of stared at you and grunted and just drove off in embarrassment, that was me along the way. He wrote back and
That's
he was
gotta
like really
be.
nice.
He's such a nice guy. That's gotta be the ultimate. Well, like I feel like that's gotta be cool fame, right? Because it's not like you're the LeBron James where literally everybody knows who you are and stops you everywhere, but it's a very specific group of people who really appreciate you for what you do. Like I wonder if Lenny has to wear like a hat in an airport now, if it's that level of fame now. I just copy everything that he and I'm gonna butcher his name, Gurgley dude, the pragmatic engineer. Like they've laid out the playbook.
The thing that is exciting is that they're just so passionate about what they're so passionate about what they do, and then that comes across. You can you believe that that's genuinely them, and that mirrors, I guess, back to what you talked about, is like being genuine with like the stuff that you're interested in. It will invariably make it more interesting because it's not high level. You'll probably go deeper on probing questions because like there's this like interesting little moment, and instead of just an hour of generic advice, you actually kind of
Yeah.
learn something or challenge your thoughts.
It's not only is the subject matter good, but it's like, are you uniquely qualified to answer it? And then do you do it in a way that's energetic and shows passion? I think that goes a long way because people can sniff out, like, if you had me talking about interest rates and the economy, like, I'd probably get it right, but people would be like, this guy's a snooze fest right now. I think you need to find something that, like, people can tell if you don't actually care about it and you're just phoning it in.
What When you look back, how many episodes did you do? What are some of your favorite ones?
I think I'm at 50 this week. All right, two that come to mind. I interviewed Rich Gotham, who's the president of the Celtics. So he's the head of the entire organization. Like everyone rolls up to him as far as I know. And we talked about the business of basketball. So most of the people I interview are CFOs. I talked to him about how a NBA team makes money and how they forecast for the org. So one of the questions I asked him was, "Hey, do you actually sit down with an FP&A analyst when you're building the revenue forecast and plan for playoff games?" Because, that's not within the 82 game schedule. And I assume a lot of that is upside. And what he said is we actually do sit down, and I'm like thinking, if I was an FP&A analyst talking about like the quality of, like, is Jaylen Brown going to put up 30 points a game this year? I was like, that would be mind blowing experience versus like how many SaaS seats can I sell into this customer? And he said, we look at the team and then we say, do we make the playoffs or not? Yes or no, binary. And then after that, we say, well, we plan for up to 2 rounds of getting through. And after that, everything is completely incremental to our model. He said, but something weird that you probably didn't know is that in, was it '08 when they won the championship? I'm a bad fan for blanking on this. We actually lost money that year because our payroll tax was so high. So even though we sold out every single game because we had KG, we had Paul Pierce, we had Rajon Rondo, we had Ray Allen, and we went through all the series through the Lakers. It went to game 7. We lost money that year because of the payroll. So I was like, this is the coolest business to try to forecast.
That's part of the thing about Run the Numbers. You can dive deep into business models that are just not well known or understood, and you dive some of the complexities of the make it or break it. I think about that now because I love skiing. Skiing is the thing. Me and my family love it. Wife, not so much, but dealing with that along the way. And so we were supposed to go to Tahoe tomorrow in California to go skiing, and this storm is blowing in now, and I'm like, as Easter, I'm like, I just want a powder day, and like I'm willing to drag my family through and like make it up work, but then we might get stuck up there. What does that mean? But to a ski resort, like your revenue is completely dependent upon something that is entirely out of your control,
Yeah.
whether or not Mother Nature decides to dump a lot of snow. And last year, like my cousins were skiing on the 4th of July. We got pictures in shorts and a t-shirt skiing on the 4th of July. 3 years ago, the season ended in like February.
There's so many quirks to business models around seasonality that I like to dig into. Like I interviewed Todd Rakow from Gladly. It's a customer support software. And he was saying that they have to plan for the business because it's a usage-based model very differently in Q4 because everybody gets like a shitty Christmas gift they don't want and then they have to return it. Um, and like for me, I'm in the auto industry, and something that I didn't know before I got here was that our revenue spikes actually about right now, late March and early April, because people get refunds from the IRS in the mail and they go and get their brake pads done. So these are the things that I get energetic about that like probably 99% of the world doesn't, but the 1% that do, they're like, hell yeah, this is what I want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of FP&A is trying to predict the future, and that is invariably hard. I come from a math background, so most of my jobs historically have been modeling. Similarly, not financial modeling for cash flow, but modeling risk and fraud and sort of customer kind of growth analytics internally, mostly in like consumer lending. And the better you get, the more I think the more fun the job is, but also the more challenging. Um, and so it's fun. It's also, does it feel, what's your point of view on like the role? It still feels like the job, if you do data science, which is not the same as FP&A, but a lot
Yeah.
of it's the same thing, is you have your data cleansing, which we kind of call accounting in finance.
Hmm.
And then you have your data modeling, which is like FP&A along the way. There's like awesome software for every company to do like data modeling in every industry except finance. Like it's sort of you
Yeah.
guys have a tolerance for software pain that is
It's
unlike
unmatched.
any other industry I've ever met. Bookkeepers and finance people, some of the worst software that exists in the world of software.
And also, to any product manager out there that works at a finance company, just because we're finance people doesn't mean we want ugly tools. Like if you've ever looked at like an expense management system, I'm not going to use names from like 10 years ago, you'd be like, this looks like something that NASA used like for the Apollo 13 mission. They just assume that finance people, because we're back office, strategic back office, I may add, that we'll just put up with like a really ugly looking product. It's like, give us some love, give us something that actually has like a couple colors in it.
I could very much agree. And back to sort of the interaction between the CEO and the CFO. While like the podcast is not affiliated with Puzzle, the company that I'm building now,
Yeah.
one of my biggest frustrations as a math person is like I want to make data-driven decisions as much as possible. And in the early days, I almost should go interview some of the early CFOs that had put up with me, like in the day. I would be so frustrated because I think similarly, like we were kind of speaking slightly different languages. And, like if I speak to you louder in Farsi, like it doesn't make you understand Farsi anymore than if I'm speaking to you in a normal language. But like that's kind of the road it takes. And so I was frustrated. And at the end of the day, I would dive in. Why do we have such a huge finance team? Why are we spending so much money on this? And then at the end, I was like, oh, you guys have a software problem. Like it's not you, it's your tools along the way. And that is one of the inspirations that got me motivated when I sort of, at least my hypothesis was that you guys are just putting up with like mediocre software.
Yeah, that's to put it kindly. Sasha, when you were starting Puzzle, who were you pitching to for the first sales? Were you pitching to CEOs or CFOs?
One of the challenges of why the software is so outdated is it's hard. It's actually hard to build. It's harder to build, even though it's just software. It's actually harder. There's a huge upfront cost. So the business model is actually a little bit more like hardware, where there's like large upfront costs and kind of supply chains, in this case, data feeds that need to be created with all of the handling and edge case and regulation to make sure it's there. And then you can start building some cool stuff. So when I was pitching it, because we spent almost 4 or 5 years building before we released it and had any customers, is CFOs, because I wanted to understand what were the things that they were driving. So I interviewed about 250 CFOs and controllers, and that was kind of one of the
You
key
talked to
insights.
250. That's a lot.
Yeah,
That's a lot of
uh,
combos.
I had Yeah, I wanted to have conviction before I decided to. It's not very many people that are, uh, well, let's say, foolish enough to spend 5 years building software before you can put it in front of a customer. You have to have confidence that the market's going to go your way. There's defensibility, like all the typical business case stuff, and on the flip side. But our first customers, not surprising, were like early adopter founders that were like, I've just not, I haven't done any like accounting or insights or modeling or financial planning yet. And I was like, well, give me your data and I'll like do it for you. And so we had a bunch of
Wow.
generous, about 100 companies. And now where we work mostly with account founders and then also accountants, and some accounting firms too.
Sorry, sometimes I get distracted. I'm like, squirrel. 4 to 5 years before it came out. My product is writing and podcasting. I know within like 1 hour of it coming out, if people like it or not. How the hell do you mentally deal with that length of a feedback cycle?
I think it's like a healthy mix of optimism and stubbornness along the way. Well, that's why I interviewed 250 people. I did some prototypes, put it in front of them, asked them about willingness to pay because you had to have sort of confidence. And then I was a venture capitalist before doing investing. And one of the things that really kind of trains you on are what are big market inflection points in an industry that can shift it. And so my first company was a platform shift around mobile phones coming out. Smartphones were there.
Yep.
That was going to change the landscape. It wasn't like a small change, it was sort of incremental change. The next was about a big regulatory shift that happened. The subprime mortgage crisis like changed the regulatory landscape really dramatically for financial services. And this is AI. Like we saw the I've known Sam Altman for a very, very long time. And so you saw the trajectory and we saw, okay, like you don't know what the impact is or how fast it's going to be, but AI is going to change a lot of the landscape of many different industries. And if this is happening, can you position it in a way that can create something that is, you got the quote unquote 10x better? And the hypothesis was yes. Never in my wildest dreams would I imagine that AI would have been so commercially available, so fast, and so impactful. But that was kind of the big bet, and the timing kind of seems to be working out really nicely.
So you were identifying trends at the right time. Where do you think finance software is within that inflection point? Has it, how far? What inning are we in?
I think so. One of the things that AI is not great at right now is math, but that's
Yeah, it kind of sucks
changing
at it, right?
pretty quickly. And so if you can combine, which is kind of funny, right? It's counterintuitive that like math is typically the most logical thing, and art is and writing is typically more of a creative thing, and it's like really attacking the creative aspect faster. As it's getting better at math, I think it depends on your perspective. I think it's going to make everybody's jobs a lot more fun, and so there is a lot of fear out there. I don't want to acknowledge that like it's going to change people's jobs pretty dramatically. But if you believe that the most fun part of a job of a finance person is those conversations about where there is no right answer and you're having those really meaningful, super important discussions, and the strategic part really thrive, you're going to shine. Like AI is going to be the catalyst that is going to make your job so much more fun.
Mm-hmm.
If you are excited about doing repetitive, low value work, and that's like your pride is like the data cleansing, like it's gonna do that pretty well. And so the people that embrace this and really enjoy those strategic discussions are going to become superpowers to wherever they're working.
That's pretty neat. I was talking to Fred Havemeyer, who works for Macquarie. He's a sell-side analyst on the pod, and he's in charge of their U.S. AI software research division. And he was saying that he thinks AI, the productivity gains, a lot of it so far is like pulling people who are laggards up to the median. So, like, say you're running a customer support center, you pull like the lower performers up 30 or 40%, which is like still a very meaningful productivity gain from AI. But like he's like, I still haven't seen this 100x engineer they've been promising at the top.
Yeah, it's similarly. I think that the great engineers that really like the architecture are going to really thrive because nobody gets excited about building this thing that every other company has that's like not a value add. It's about how you apply that into your own differentiation. But if you don't understand the structures of code, like I couldn't just pick up GitHub Copilot and become like a 10x engineer.
Yeah.
But like it takes people who really like that core critical thinking and just abstracts away the boring parts of their job that like drive them bonkers. And I think it's just been this world of pain for accounting and FP&A for so long that that's just like they're part of their identity a little bit, and it will shift. It's going to happen fast. But they'll realize on the other end that like, God, this job is so much more fun. I'm not bound by time anymore. And I'm not bound by what I want to do. Because I can just do it all. The agents, the bots, the AI will take care of this kind of low level stuff. I get to do more thinking, which I think is more fun.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Well, you know what I always say, maintaining compliance is never complete, which is why most security and IT teams feel like they're always in audit purgatory. I'm there right now. But there is a solution, and it's easier than you think. Escape the infinite loop by using Thoropass's compliance and audit solution. Thoropass is the only solution using AI-infused technology and in-house auditors to take your team from start to stamp without leaving the platform. As a winner of multiple G2 awards, including top awards for usability and service, your team is in good hands with Thoropass. From onboarding with dedicated experts to audits from in-house auditors who know every aspect of your framework needs, you can have complete confidence in your Thoropass compliance journey. Thoropass is the only solution to offer audits for your most needed security frameworks. I'm talking HIPAA to High Trust and SOC 2 to ISO 27001. Woo! If you need PCI, DSS, pen tests, or any other major compliance framework, Thoropass can hook you up. With Thoropass, you never need to worry again. Relax, we fix audits. Find more at thoropass.com. That's THOROPASS.com. Tell them your boy CJ sent you. They'll hook you up. Boom. Reduce burn, extend runway, do more with less. Operational efficiency. These are all catchphrases that we know all too well because of the headwinds business leaders face in today's growth environment. Growth is now a battle, not a breeze. While teams are on the front lines fighting every day for top-line yardage, there are hidden savings opportunities right beneath their feet. That's where Tropic comes into play. Their procurement platform brings order and process to a historically decentralized and chaotic business function: purchasing and supplier management. Tropic serves as the front door for procurement that your entire company will want to use. By combining intake forms, pricing benchmarks, approval workflows, and supplier management all in one place, Tropic makes savings opportunities easy to find and act on. When you pour blood, sweat, and tears into revenue growth, doesn't it make sense to protect what you have fought for? Visit tropicapp.io, that's tropicapp.io, to learn how modern businesses are controlling spend to extend their runway. Your board will thank you. Your budget will thank you. Your bottom line will thank you. That's cool. How much of your new show do you think will be talking about trends that are specific to finance versus just like stuff that are important to CEOs with like a finance lens to it? Like, how do you balance it? You're a big thinker. Like, I feel like your brain works at like 1,000 more RPMs than mine does. So like, I'm very interested to see what you're going to discuss in this podcast.
Well, I'm going to approach it similarly to how I approach building a business to some degree, which is like there's some things that I think are there's an insight and a point that is important. But the audience, like my customers, tell, like when they drive a big influence in the roadmap, and I think that will be similar here. We'll see what people started lighting. The part that I get the most excited about are these like huge inflection point moments. So what I would love, I hope people find it interesting. What I'm going to start with is going to try and moment on these, like this 1 week of life inside of a company, not the role of a CFO, not here, but like these inflection points. So for example, we talked with the CEO of Mercury, not about Mercury, like a little bit, about the moment that SVB collapsed, what was happening inside of Mercury. Like that week, literally, what did you do? And then this other part where with the CFO of Instacart, when Amazon bought Whole Foods, which was 40% of the revenue, like what do you actually do the day that you read this press release and the biggest logistics company in the entire world buys your largest customer, and which you are a logistics provider for delivery. So that's kind of these moments. It's like this 1 week of time. And we talk about other stuff, like this 1 week of time, what it's like. But those are the pieces that I have these conversations privately, and they're so fascinating. Like let's go there. And I'll start with all the ones that ended up becoming really positive for the outcome, because those people want to talk about. But I hope over time I can get people comfortable that like we can tell in a way about there's also moments in business's life where these big moments happen and it turns out not as great for the company. And I have those in private, but yeah, I'm tepid to start asking people quite yet because those are more challenging moments.
It's funny you say that, man. So I do this thing called the long ass lightning round. It's trademark, so you can't steal it on this pod. Okay, I'm just playing with you. But in it, I always ask people, "Can you tell me one thing that you've messed up in your career?" And that's been like my first dipping my toe into the water about getting people to talk about something they've effed up. But you'll have the most popular podcast in the entire world, Sasha, if you can get people to talk about like moments of failure, because the world doesn't have enough of it.
I tried to get my first board member to come in to talk about our first board meeting of my very first company, my very first board meeting on time, because it was awful. So awful, in fact.
Like you were awful?
I was awful. Terrible.
Tell us about
it. I want to save this moment because if I'm going to eventually get some, but it was so bad that I actually met his mother, and his mother was like, "Oh, you're the guy that had that awful board meeting with," and I was like, "Yeah,
it made it that far.
Nice to meet you." It made it to the dinner table with their mom along the way. So I wanted to, but I just want to know is like you. It was a typical first-time founder. Like, I'm just gonna wing it. I'm not gonna listen to CJ's podcast about how to run a really good board meeting. I'm gonna
Dave Kellogg.
Yeah. It was like great. Episode 13. I wish I had listened to it before, but there wasn't awesome content creators like you. So I just kind of winged it. It was about 13 years ago. And I like did some Google search and like saw something that I did it. And it was just awful. Way too long. I was doing all the talk, like the typical first time founder, high hubris, like, and then at the end, everybody looked at me and my co-founder came out and was like, "That was awful. So boring. Nobody cares." And here we are. Now I run pretty great. Actually, I'm going to publish on Twitter we just had a board meeting, like how I run board meetings now.
Oh, nice.
And like the template that I use for my board materials, and I'll share some stuff because like you just don't, it's such a terrible first impression that is now the laughing joke 13 years later with my original board member of like how I was awful.
My number one post on Substack for 2 years was about how I lost $200,000 of my own money trying to start a company. So I'm 0 for 1. You're like 8 for 8 over there. But it's funny because me and my wife joke all the time that the business people wanted me to start all along was just to write, which is like a zero cost business other than me just writing or podcasting to a certain degree. But people eat up failure stories. I think there's something in everybody that not in like I'm rooting for you to fail, but like I've felt that pain too. And especially when you tell a story from an entrepreneurial perspective of like, I put my heart into this and like I fell flat on my face. There's something like visceral in people who have failed before that they're like, yes, I have felt that deep pain too.
That's good to hear. So I'm optimistic because I have made I had to make every mistake in the book. If there's a list, I want to see it because I'm sure I can check at least half of them, if not all of them off. And so hopefully I can disarm some other people by saying, "Oh, let me tell you about how I royally mess this up," and then let's take some lessons learned along the way. Yeah, you can't have to lean into it. It's a reality. Like I can't hide it. I made lots of mistakes. I hope I can save other people and have some fun along the way.
I always say like my mistake can be your starting point. And I always say that. I stole that term from somebody last week, so I don't always say it, but I've said it twice now. And I really do think that we need more content around failures. The problem is you have to find someone who's so successful that it's not as painful to them anymore in the moment to talk about it. So I'm sure within your illustrious network, Sasha, you'll find someone very, very famous who can talk about something hopefully big that they failed at that they can talk about now.
We spend so much time highlighting the success and even actually turning moments of success like a fundraising round. Like, yes, it is hard to do and it's an accomplishment, but like, great, I have a bigger bank account. Like, that's why is it celebrating? It doesn't have any success. We celebrate a lot of the funding rounds and we celebrate a lot of that in the tech venture space, at least. I want to celebrate actual business success. And then hopefully along the way we can learn lessons about people that are. I actually think Logan Bartlett did a really amazing job with Parker Conrad about like the founding of Rippling and how that went. It was, to me, I was one of the most fascinating podcasts I've ever learned about. And not that Parker's a failure, is actually one of the most incredible entrepreneurs of all time. I think he will be the next.
Did they talk about Zenefits and the whole road to it?
Yeah, he really found a way to kind of disarm him and have him open up, and it's fascinating story.
Yeah, I have a lot of admiration for Rippling. I interviewed their CFO Adam Zawicki a couple weeks ago, and I think that's actually the number one listened to episode of the pod thus far. Like they're doing something right over there.
Yeah, I think the way that they described it on the podcast was like, there's because it's like fits the American spirit. It's like somebody's gonna win, and they faced adversity and they overcame it, and they went along the way, and like we love those stories here in America.
Do you think you have a chip on your shoulder still?
I mean, I think so. Yeah, I have to, right? Like I built a company and it's successful. I built another one that I think will go public and become a massive unicorn. But like, I want to do something bigger and better. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I still have a little bit of hair. You can see.
Yeah.
The good thing about these
things,
it hides the back where the balding is. And my grays are coming in on the side. So like from the front, it still looks there. But yeah, I want to build something. That's part of the fun of Silicon Valley is the future is possible and there's money to create it.
I need some advice. I'm in the process of deciding where we live long term here. Do you think where you live physically dictates your success in career to a large degree? Like, do you think it matters where you live?
Unquestionably. Now, with everything, there's an exception to the rule. So you can give me an edge case of everywhere else, but there's a reason why people live in New York and San Francisco. Like, why would we put up with so much homelessness and drug use and crime and dysfunction and live in tiny places with no backyards? Like, why would anybody in their right mind do that? I could go out for burgers with my kids. It's like $125. And like, it's okay, whatever. It's like insane. Nobody in any right mind.
$125 in burgers, might get stabbed. I don't know what happens. It's like,
totally. It's a danger zone. It's like a video game when you're walking.
So why do we do it?
Because this is where the future happens. That's like San Francisco and the Bay Area is where it happens. I've closed so many clients, so many deals, all of my funding and everything is here because this is where you go. I was riding my bike home, stopped in at a founder happy hour, closed 3 clients, closed a partner, and met one of my very first customers I've never met face to face, whose like quote is literally on our website. And the only reason we know it is because he started a new company. I was so excited about what he's doing. It's a learning app, learn.xyz. It's like incredible. My son is like a thirst for knowledge. I'm so excited to put it on for him. And he's like, dude, we should connect on LinkedIn. And we open up the little scan thing and he's like, wait, you're Sasha? Yeah. You're Sasha from Puzzle? Yeah. He's like, dude, I've been using your product for like a year and a half. And I was like, that would have been wild. Right before we released. He's like, you probably recognize my name. It's on your website as a testimonial. I was like, oh my God, Art. Yes. This is sweet. Like that doesn't happen in other places. And so I think Puzzle would none of my companies would have existed anywhere else except the Bay Area.
Have you always lived in the Bay Area?
No, I lived in Honduras and Mexico and Sweden and England and New York and DC and Oakland and San Diego. Yeah, exactly. And now I'm here because this is the place to be for building companies. I think New York has a similar vibe and energy where you can create serendipity in moments that you just can't do in other places. So if you're a builder, you should be in San Francisco, and if you are a take a piece of somebody else's building, you should be in New York. And everywhere else is that's where you live when you want to be happy.
Yeah.
Where do you live?
I'm in Naples, Florida right now. I'm from Boston and my wife's from Connecticut. We got 2 young kids, and it's difficult to do it without any family help. This was definitely a COVID move. And I mean, the tax situation, the sunlight out here, but dude, I'm living in I'm living in basically a nursing home. But it's a nice nursing home.
Totally. You have these things that I've heard of and I've read of. I think it's called quality of life and sunshine. And your kids probably know your name.
Yeah.
Those are the things that most people, I think, in the world want. Like, that's a successful life. My kids know my name. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I exercise. There's sunshine. Like,
I can hear them screaming downstairs as we speak, and I'm gonna go down after this, and they're gonna probably throw paint at me or something or whatever they're working on. But
do you want to keep going? I can ask up more questions.
I want to keep going. I delay this as long as possible. But I always do wonder that if like where you live matters in the long term of things, or if the internet has truly brought us to that point where you can reach anybody anywhere and good people find each other. But I think you're selling me.
It's possible. Like, again, there's an exception to every rule. You could build a great podcast as a 17-year-old in London that's just curious about the venture world and figure out how to make it work entirely on Twitter in 20 minutes an episode. And that is possible. And there's an exception to that rule. So, it's possible, and it wasn't possible probably before the pandemic. Now we have this great infrastructure. I didn't even know where you were. I just opened up Riverside, and here we are. Like, this is great. It is possible, but there are moments of serendipity of your early clients, of your early decisions, of your early capital that I think are possible in the digital world in a screen, and really much better when you can talk to somebody face to face. And you're not like artificially constrained over like a set 30-minute Zoom. You're just like, you're talking, and it allows to build a rapport and an honesty and a trust that when you're raising $10 million, $30 million, $100 million, you're going public is nice.
That's a good point. People are writing a big fat check. They probably want to meet you.
Yeah. We used to do this it was crazy. Like, I would literally drive up and down Sand Hill Road from meeting to meeting in like, I think back, and one way to look at it is that was the least efficient use of time. Now, if the efficiency is measured at the number of meetings you can do while sitting in your sweatpants in your living room, for sure. But that's how trust is about. That's how a lot of money is being deployed, because you can have these unstructured conversations that aren't artificially constrained by a Calendly event.
I think efficient and impactful are two different things sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah, you can do a lot more, but is that more having the impact that you want? And that is, I think, a lot of the basis of what fascinates you and me in different ways as a CFO and a CEO is, are we having the biggest impact on dollars that we're spending or on time that we're spending? Not am I doing the most amount of things, but actually am I doing the most impactful things?
As a CFO, I'm trying to do this whole Eisenhower matrix thing that Adam from Rippling taught me about what's most urgent and what's most impactful. I do struggle with it because like right now I got a Slack that's blinking with 6 notifications. Like, do I want to really context shift and check those? What's actually most important in the day to day? And I credit CEOs who get 10 times more email traffic than I do of being able to weed through it, and also get up to 40,000 feet and actually do what's most impactful. How do you manage your time? Like, you're starting this podcast now. You're also a CEO. You have a family. Do you have any frameworks that you use to manage your time?
I'm really disciplined with my schedule. So we know what is happening almost every hour between my wife and I, because she's an executive at a publicly traded company as well. And so we need to be really structured with time. We have help a lot to help free up time around the way. But I have a chief of staff who I'm a huge fan of, Paige Honeycomb at the company. And every morning after I drop the kids off, I have the morning, and that's my private time with my kids and my family and and getting ready. And then I talk with her the first thing in the morning, every day, first thing. What do we want to accomplish today? What are we worried about? What are we there? And it keeps us really focused on the day. We clear the calendar. We sort of make sure we're accomplishing these things, and we hold each other accountable. So I have an accountability partner at work, and then at home, my wife and I are really great sort of accountability partners. And so I do that. And then Gokul, who is one of like the prolific angel investors, was like very early at Facebook and Google and Square, and I think now is at DoorDash. Before I started this company again, before he invested in this one too, he made me read a book called The Build Trap. And it solidifies this point of what you're talking about. It's a short book. It's very easy to read. And it's about if you create incentive structures in a company where you're motivated by shipping the number of things instead of the impact you have on the business, like you're setting up the wrong incentive structures. And so it was sort of there of like, don't value yourself as like the more things you build that you can tweet about, like make an impact on your customers' lives. And it really just, I kind of reread it every year because it's a short, easy book, but it reminds you to focus on impact, not volume.
Yeah, I've been reading Slow Productivity, which just came out. I'm really bad with this whole email thing, man. Like I need to get better at it. I don't know. I'm suffering under the weight of emails and one-on-ones.
Yeah, well, I try. I also don't have a life, and I ride my bike to and from work to get a little bit more exercise but these things come at a sacrifice. So I want to spend time with my wife and my kids.
Yeah.
Thursday night tonight is date night. It's sacrosanct. You do no phones. Me and my wife every Thursday for 15 years, no interruptions.
Wow.
Nothing else, and just try and like kind of work around the schedules. But I really measure and value the impact, not the volume of things. And I think that helps surround myself with other people who share that same culture and that same value. And the dumb thing that I say to people again and again, and they get annoyed with it, is we might get multiple lives, but we definitely get this one. And so have the biggest impact that you can.
Damn, that's a clip.
But you do the things you enjoy. I think this goes back to your original point of why your podcast is so great is you start to evolve to the things that you're interested in. And then it's exciting. Yes, it's work, but like it's kind of the fun part. And that's why I'm like so excited about what I'm building too, because the conversations that I have with my finance team are the most fun part, not watching them categorize the same Facebook transaction as advertising 30 times a month. And like, no, that's not great. Nobody needs to do that. Like, let's have a good time. We can work less and have a bigger impact. And I think that's what comes across in your podcast, which is why I'm so excited for you to go off and build your empire.
Oh, thanks, man.
And I hope I can fill your shoes to some degree. Not a
I think the
replacement,
listeners on this feed are in very good hands. You've elevated the caliber of the entrepreneur you get to hang out with. So I'm happy for them.
Actually, this can be the grand finale. So as people are like finishing listening and they're going to go over and smash that subscribe button. Isn't that what you guys say? The content creators say? Like, what was the thing, if we think about this one moment where there's imperfect information, you decided to take this podcast and spin it off into your own thing? Why?
I want to bet on myself and see the results on its own. And that's not to say that there haven't been great people to get me started, but like I want to feel like it's my own business to a certain extent. And I want the credit whether I win or lose. And I want to build something and feel like I can see the tangible impact.
What was the moment that you were like, yes?
The moment I was like, yes, it was probably when I cold DM'd Tony Kim, the head of tech investments at BlackRock, and he agreed to come on the podcast. So BlackRock, like the Illuminati, that's as big as it gets when it comes from an investment perspective. He's in charge of technology. And the guy came and had an hour conversation with me. And I think that was when I was like, I can hold my own, and I can also get the best out of people into a conversation and package it into a product that I think people appreciate. And then coming out of that, I was like, I can write like 10 different things on this. This was like just the level of energy I had coming out of that conversation. And I think the confidence that I had in myself, because there is a certain level of like imposter syndrome when you start talking to people. Like, I tell people all the time, like I have a CFO podcast. I've only been a CFO for just under 2 years. Like, I don't know everything. Like I'm making this up as I go along, man. But I think that was like one of the big moments that gave me confidence. Like, no, people will listen to you. Like you can do this.
Yeah, I think everybody can relate with imposter syndrome. I have it all the time.
Really?
And I've been being a
Still?
CEO for 13 years. Yeah, because you just, the world changes. It's never the exact same thing in the exact same way in the exact same economy. Like things change. And I think the one of the ways to get over imposter syndrome is to just acknowledge it, because everybody has it. And if you don't have to pretend you have all the answers.
Like I remember the first paid subscription on Substack. I don't even know how to describe the feeling. It's wild.
We, in my first company, we had a Raspberry Pi attached to a siren on the ceiling. And anytime a customer would come, it would just light up and go off and you're like, I built something that people want. I mean, this is the
Yeah.
core foundation of like starting a company is you build something that people want. And Y Combinator just drills this into your mind. Build something that people want. And then when you exit your business, it said, I made something that people want. But like,
Oh,
this
really?
is, you're right in the moment of you've found a niche, you found an entryway into something that people want. And it's infinitely scalable, which is also sort of rare in the business world. You don't have to order like parts from foreign countries and wait for them to arrive and make sure you can assemble all these like things. It's like, you just have to create interesting content and you can distribute it and YouTube with your handsome face and across like, whatever Spotify on everything else. And
Yeah.
it'll
The
come
Miss
out.
Rachel of finance,
Soon hopefully I'll be the CJ of podcasts.
Oh man, you're too kind. Hopefully I'll be the Sasha of some business that's big and audacious.
Well, I'm excited for you. I know the listeners are super excited for you. They are going to go over to Run the Numbers, subscribe to the new thing, because you are not going to get CJ on this feed anymore. You're going to listen to me if I can ever get this like thing up and running. We had quite a bit of a fumbling
I have
getting this
faith
started.
in you. Just don't spill whatever you spilled. There may be milk on the floor. Did you like kick a dog bowl on the way over here? Like I heard something.
There is planning goes a long way.
Yeah.
And so no just-in-time podcasting. Best of luck in your CEO, founder, empire, media journey building. I'm excited. I am a listener. I'm excited to continue listening and learning from you, both as how to work with and be a great CFO and also how to be a great interviewer.
You're gracious, and thanks to Turpentine for everything they did to get me up and rolling. Eternally grateful.
All right, everybody. Talk soon.
Peace.